And the advisor to Iran's supreme leader posted on social media that the Islamic Republic of Iran had repeatedly declared that it would not tolerate violations of the ceasefire or aggression against Lebanon. The aggressors received their response. This response is a warning for them to cease their villainy. Every new action will be met with a more crushing response and heavier costs. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Yariv Oppenheimer. He is the former general director of Peace Now and member of the Democrats, a social democratic political party in Israel. You're joining us from Tel Aviv. Thanks for being on the program. How do you think Israel is going to interpret what happened tonight? Because you heard that message there from Iranian leadership saying, this is them saying, we will hit Israel harder if Israel continues to hit Hezbollah. Israel might be thinking this evening, well, we intercepted all these Iranian ballistic missiles. No harm was done to us.
Actually, the current government has an interest to restart the war with Iran. It can serve it political inside Israel, and therefore it's not something that is really make the Israeli ministers afraid, or the prime minister. The only blockade between a full all-out war between Israel and Iran is Trump and the interest of the United States. Therefore, Netanyahu tonight is under heavy pressure from the White House because his personal political interest is to retaliate, and strongly. He doesn't like the negotiation with Iran. He would like to see the resume of the war. But if Trump will say and will actually veto any action of the Israeli army, Netanyahu cannot violate this. So this is the dilemma of Netanyahu. Trump has his own interest not to escalate the situation, and Netanyahu has its own interest to restart the war and to drag the United States again to the same situation. Therefore, I believe that eventually either Netanyahu will attack in a very smooth way, according to Trump demands, or we might be even seeing that Israel is saying, okay, we are not going to retaliate this time, but next time it will be harder. I don't think that Netanyahu can achieve what he would like to achieve, and this is a really strong hit on Iran that will push Iran to a full outscale war with Israel.
So your opinion is that if the U.S. president tells Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, not to hit or not to hit back hard against Iran, the prime minister will have to comply?
I don't think that he has any other alternative. He might be able to convince Trump that according to his needs, with inside his own political situation and the public opinion in Israel, he is asking for some kind of retaliation. But he will have to comply. By the way, it's very interesting to see that Iran shoot Israel, but didn't hit or didn't aim to the center of Israel, not to Tel Aviv, not to Jerusalem.
How do you interpret
like
that?
A warning. I think that Iran is trying to say this is just a warning action. We are not ready, or we don't want to have a full-scale war. Therefore, it was just warning to the north of Lebanon, to the north of Israel. But it's very interesting to see that this is the first time in history that when Israel is attacking Lebanon, Iran retaliates. This is something that we never experienced in the past, and this is an outcome of the last war that is not a success for Israel, because previously Israel could do almost whatever it likes in Lebanon, and there was not even a thinking about retaliation of Iran. And now we have a new equation in which if Israel is attacking Beirut, Iran attacking Israel, this is something new that it will be very hard to digest for the Israeli government, and therefore the pressure on Netanyahu to attack back will be strong.
Does that mean that Israel has lost, just purely as a matter of logic, Israel has lost a measure of deterrence against Iran?
I think that this is definitely the situation. We see it in our own eyes. We can hear the siren. So this is the result of the last war. There is a big question mark about the achievement of the last war with Iran. For many Israelis, to see Israel and America acting together against Iran was a victory, because we are with the most Israel is with the most strongest nation in the world. But having said that, if you look at the results of this war, so Israel is now more vulnerable to Iranian attack, and Iran allow itself to attack Israel, even if Israel is not attacking Iran. This is something definitely new, and it should be taken into consideration. A normal country cannot bear the situation that every few months there are missiles being firing from other country to each area. And if this is what you are going to see in the next few years for Israel, it's definitely not a good news.
There's one part of the logic that I don't, or not the logic, but one part of the sequence of events that I don't quite follow. A week ago, the U.S. president told the Israeli prime minister to back off from his planned attack against Dahieh. And Benjamin Netanyahu did that. Israel did not launch the attacks that they were planning to launch against Dahieh. And then a week later, they did. And that's the part that's the missing piece here that I don't fully understand.
Actually, what we saw today in Lebanon was not a full-scale attack. When Israel attacked before or threatened to attack, it gave a warning to many people in Beirut to evacuate. This time it was not such a full-scale attack. It was much more limited. And there is a real question mark whether it was coordinated with the Americans, because it was very obvious that Iran will react. Definitely Netanyahu has the motivation and the interest to escalate the situation in all fronts, including Lebanon and including Iran. And also we have to remind ourselves that there is a lot of pressure on Netanyahu within inside Israel, because soldiers and civilians are being attacked and being killed by Hezbollah drones almost on a daily basis. And the Israeli public is asking Netanyahu, what are we doing in Lebanon if we cannot fight back and we are there and we are vulnerable and we are being hit? So we would like to see a response. So the pressure on Netanyahu to show that he's fighting Hezbollah and not just getting this attack, this is one of his motivation to attack in Lebanon. But definitely, if there will be a retaliation to Iran and we will find ourselves in a few weeks of a war, it's definitely is going to serve Netanyahu's interest. I doubt it if Trump will allow it to happen.
Yariv Oppenheimer, the former general director of Peace Now, thank you very much for joining us. If you're just tuning in to our extensive coverage here on Al Jazeera, Iran has launched a wave of missiles towards Israel. The military says that it has intercepted all the missiles launched so far, but there are reports that further attacks are expected. Iran says the strikes are in response to Israel's attack on Beirut's southern suburbs.
Through its repeated violations of the ceasefire, the aggressive Zionist regime has continuously escalated its acts of aggression against the oppressed people of Lebanon. These actions have been carried out with the green light and support of the criminal United States and amid the silence of international community. By employing prohibited weapons, including phosphorus munitions, the regime has committed war crimes. Despite previous warnings issued by the Islamic Republic of Iran, the child-killing Zionist regime has crossed all red lines by intensifying its attacks in southern Lebanon and targeting Dahieh and the southern suburbs of Beirut. We had previously warned that if there were any crimes committed in Dahieh, we would strike within those occupied territories. The Zionist military must immediately cease its attacks against southern Lebanon and Dahieh. Should it expand its aggression in that area or respond to Iran's action, it will face even more forceful blows. In such a case, devastating operations will be launched against the regime and its supporters.
Joining us now is Rami Khouri, Distinguished Fellow at the American University of Beirut, joining us from Boston. Rami, the U.S. wanted to break Iran's support for regional armed groups. That was one of the reasons, or one of the justifications for going to war against Iran. Amongst a few key other reasons, obviously, nuclear, Iran's missile arsenal. But one of the main things that the U.S. said it wanted to achieve was break this connection and support from Iran to its key regional allies, such as Hezbollah. And it seems now that the opposite is happening.
Yes, this is really an extraordinary moment, not just in this current conflict, but in historical terms. We've had 4 different groups in the last couple of years in the Middle East, Hezbollah, Iran, the Palestinians, and Ansarullah in Yemen. 4 groups who have fought back, resisted the combination of Israel and the United States with their massive military advantages, and they've successfully forced them to twice make a ceasefire and enter into negotiations, even though the U.S. and Israel don't seriously negotiate and don't observe ceasefires. But this is unprecedented, and nobody knows where this is going to lead us, how long it'll go on. It's likely the U.S. and Israel will escalate their military assault, their savagery, in terms of what they did in Gaza. They'll probably do that in parts of Lebanon, maybe parts of Iran. They have to try to stop the emergence of groups in the Middle East, in Muslim majority countries, Arab countries, Islamic countries, Iranian. It doesn't matter the ethnicity or which religious group they are or whatever, but they have to, the Israelis and Americans have to stop the reality of people in the region who can check the power of the United States and Israel and force it into diplomacy. And the U.S., using the techniques of Donald Trump's chicanery and outright duplicity, they've been unable to force the Iranians to surrender on the terms that the United States wants. And we keep hearing these outrageous stories, not stories, but declarations from the U.S., from the president, from Pete Hegseth, from the Secretary of State. These characters are all making these statements that the Iranians have been beaten, the Navy was sunk 75 times, the airport was destroyed 25 times, and the Iranians and Hezbollah are still pushing back, and they're saying we need to negotiate an agreement that is fair to everybody and that respects international law. Israel and the United States have never faced this kind of challenge, and it's a surprise to a lot of people that this is actually happening. So predicting the future is something that I've stopped doing about 25 years ago in the region. But analyzing what's going on is the critical thing to do. And this is something that Israelis and Americans obviously are not doing.
Rami, you suggested that the U.S. and Israel would have to escalate their response, possibly across the region. But the most recent indication and reporting is that Donald Trump is going to call or has called Benjamin Netanyahu to either stop or limit Israel's retaliation against Iran. So it seems the U.S. president wants to do the opposite of escalation. He wants to end this.
The critical word you used is seems. It seems that he wants to do that. But if you judge people by their actions, I think the only reasonable conclusion, or the most reasonable conclusion we can reach, is that the United States government, specifically Donald Trump, but the U.S. government as a whole, has been involved in a series of duplicitous acts and tricks to try to catch the Iranians off guard or Hezbollah and to beat them up militarily. They're not serious negotiators. They're certainly not very qualified, very able negotiators. They have basically their military power that they want to rely on to squeeze not just the Iranians, but the Lebanon and the Palestinians, the whole world. Look what they're doing in Gaza. And so Gaza was done with enthusiastic American support with the Israelis to carry out a genocide, which was not only designed to reduce the threat from Gaza, it was designed as an example to all the Palestinians and all the people in the region, specifically the allies of Iran and the resistance front. It was a message to them that this is your future. If you keep resisting us, you're going to end up like Gaza. And they're still putting the squeeze on Gaza with medicines and essential things not being allowed in. And now they just closed the border today, the Israelis. So the U.S. and Israel aren't sure how to deal with this kind of challenge that they're facing. I think in the short term, they're going to try to get a full ceasefire because they can't allow the deterioration to continue. The number of Israelis being killed in South Lebanon is rising very quickly, and this is another factor.
Rami Khouri, Distinguished Fellow at the American University of Beirut, joining us from Boston. Thank you very much. Now, Ali Hashem is in the Lebanese capital. Mohammed Val is in Tehran, and Mike Hanna is in Washington, D.C. Let's start there. Mike, what are we hearing? What do we know at this point, and what is the reporting on President Donald Trump? We know that he's been briefed, obviously, on what has just happened, Iran's attack against Israel. But what is he saying about it?
Well, he has been speaking to some selected individual reporters and making very clear his belief that because no real damage was done, Israel should not retaliate, because he says this would result in yet another 47-year-old war, as he puts it. So President Trump trying to put a lid on things. There are reports unconfirmed that he is making a phone call to Prime Minister Netanyahu, as he did last Monday, which was confirmed. A very testy conversation, it is said. President Trump himself, subsequent to that, insisted that he was frustrated with Prime Minister Netanyahu's operations in Lebanon because it was affecting the chances of getting a deal in place with Iran, something that President Trump desperately needs. And his reaction in the last few hours, those comments that he's been making to reporters, shows just how desperately he wants the ceasefire to stay in place. He does not want the ceasefire to end, because that would mean, in terms of what he said in the past, the U.S. would unleash military force against Iran again, involving the U.S. yet again in a conflict that is deeply unpopular within the United States. And this is something that could be very damaging politically to President Trump, and hence his desire to get this ceasefire in place, his desire to use it as an off-ramp and to move on to other things like midterm elections, which are going to be affected by the U.S. conduct in Iran and President Trump's direction of it.
Yeah, Mike Hanna reporting from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much. Let's go to the Iranian capital, Tehran. Mohammed Val is standing by. Mohammed, is Tehran now bracing for a potential Israeli response or retaliation against their attacks?
Absolutely, Cyril. That's what they have been saying. They closed the airport to civilian and all navigation, the Imam Khomeini airport, the main one around Tehran. And also the western part of the country, there was an announcement that air traffic also has been closed, the airspace of Iran in the western regions until further notice. The Red Crescent also announced that it is on standby at the highest level of readiness for any contingencies. And the army has been saying in its statement, and also the IRGC, that they launched these strikes in retaliation against Israel, and that they are bracing and ready for any response from Israel, a response which will be met with another response. The problem, Cyril, in this equation is that it is not just between Iran and Israel. I have been listening to your analysts talking about Iran probably not continuing these waves of strikes, and probably if Israel stops and doesn't respond, maybe that's the end of it. But the problem is, and the question is Israel going to stop its attacks on Beirut? Because that's where the rub is for the Iranians. Even if Israel does not respond against Iran, but continues its strikes on Beirut, southern Beirut, and probably southern Lebanon, if Iran doesn't continue and doesn't strike again in response to that, then the strikes tonight are not going to do the trick for the Iranians, because the warning is related to Lebanon. And the likelihood here among people we talk to is that the Israelis are going to try to continue their fight and their war in Lebanon, despite warnings, despite what happened tonight, and despite orders or requests from Donald Trump to stop. So that's a very tense situation here, very complicated, and there is no likelihood that even if the escalation between Iran and Israel doesn't continue tonight, there is no likelihood that what's going on in Lebanon is going to stop. And that means the continuation of this very complicated, very dangerous situation, despite American desire on the part of Donald Trump to continue the conversation, to continue the talks, and probably to sign a deal in the next few days. So Iran is bracing, in response to your question, to any strikes from Israel. And they say that when they happen, then the next phase of strikes from Iran against Israel will be more devastating.
Al Jazeera's Mohammed Val in Tehran, thank you very much. So we go to the Lebanese capital. Ali Hashem is there. Ali, you heard Mohammed saying that Iran's warning to Israel was related to Lebanon. And indeed, if you look at this, if you analyze this, all roads for what's happened this evening lead to Lebanon. Iran says that it attacked Israel because of what it is doing against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel, of course, has been pounding southern Lebanon and earlier today attacked the Lebanese capital, Beirut. The U.S. president was personally involved in trying to stop a similar attack in Beirut a week ago. So you've got at least 3 regional powers, I'm including U.S. in that list, that are heavily invested in what happens in Lebanon. How is all of this going to be perceived where you are?
Well, indeed, what we are seeing, and Lebanon being the ground zero of this escalation, Israel wanted, by this attack today noon, to emphasize that it doesn't want Iran to link Lebanon to any kind of equations in the region. And this backfired in a way, whereas Iran now is linking it directly by retaliating, as they promised before, in defense of Beirut's southern suburb. And now they're adding another condition that Israel should not attack South Lebanon and Beirut's southern suburb plus Beirut. Now, during the past hour, there have been several Israeli airstrikes in different areas in South Lebanon, in Seksakiya, Ain Qana, and also we've heard of Hezbollah attacking Israeli troops on the ground. So for the war here, it's business as usual. For the wider confrontation, it's not only about missiles and planes, it's also about who is pushing forward and who is trying to impose their own leverage on the ground. And this is actually a kind of a struggle of wills between Israel and Iran. Of course, the United States here seems to be wanting this to be contained at any price. However, there are many reasons not to believe that containment is possible, or at least it's very unlikely. Now, everyone here is waiting to see how this is going to unravel, whether Israel is going to attack Iran in a way that Iran is going to retaliate once again, and then this whole thing is going to expand more and more. What we are seeing is just emphasizing the idea of the regional war that we've seen before, and now just weeks ago, or let me say a couple of months ago, before the ceasefire on the 8th of April, and now once again the war is there. No one is really sure that this war is going to be really big, or whether it's going to be the door to end with a mega deal that ends all wars in the region.
Ali, the Lebanese government is fighting not militarily, but it wants to disarm Hezbollah, and it has outlawed Hezbollah's military activity in Lebanon. Does this attack by Iran on Israel potentially strengthen Hezbollah in Lebanon?
Well, Cyril, what's going on right now is very complicated, and it's multi-layered, if it's right to say that. Given the fact that the government is already negotiating with Israel, that was a taboo in the past. And given the fact this war, it became something that now is being normalized by the government. Even Israeli journalists are appearing now on Lebanese TVs, and things are, from the government side, are going towards a kind of a path that is completely against the old narrative that Hezbollah was also pushing forward. So now what we are seeing also is a kind of a struggle for the identity of Lebanon. I'm trying to explain something within the context of this conflict, because it's actually wider than just rockets being launched. It's a struggle for where this country is going to be and the direction of this country, just if this war comes to an end and if there is a settlement of an agreement. For now, we did not hear anything official from the Lebanese government, but this is just complicating more and more. Just last week, the Lebanese government and Israel announced a ceasefire, but there was no possibility for the government to push forward for applying this ceasefire. It did not hold, actually. The war continued, and this is not the first ceasefire. It's actually the third ceasefire since the 16th, or let me say even since the 8th of April, when the first ceasefire was announced by Iran and America, and the Iranians said that Lebanon was part of it. Then Israelis launched the huge campaign in Beirut, killing more than 350 people. There was no ceasefire. The ceasefire was announced on the 16th of April between the Lebanese government and Israel. but did not hold because the war continued. And then President Trump just last week said there is a ceasefire, nothing happened. And the fourth one announced by the Lebanese government and the Israeli government in Washington under the auspices of the Department of State. Still the war continues. So it's a very complicated conflict, and in a way that the Lebanese government here is trying its best to try to say that it holds the initiative in its hand.
Ali Hashem reporting from the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Thank you very much, Ali. And Iraq has